Oh, we're just behind the cold front here. Got the cold air coming down from the north, and if you look at these clouds here, you can see that they're kind of flattened. There's actually a frontal inversion up near the tops of these clouds, and we might be able to see this on the skew-Ts. So they're rising up, reaching a warm layer aloft, and spreading. And a lot of the reason for this cloud is due to modification of the air mass. Got that cool air from Canada moving over the warm ground, and we get the very steep lapse rates, a little bit of moisture, and that gives us the cumulus clouds trailing behind that cold front right there. So this is the pattern right now. Our frontal system has moved all the way from Kansas to Indiana, and we've got a warm front up in that area around Ohio, West Virginia, but not a whole lot of moisture reaching that area. And I've plotted the mixing ratios. So this is mixing ratio. Let me show this to you. This is in digital atmosphere. It's under the moisture, and it's under the moisture menu right here, mixing ratio grams per kilogram. It's very similar to dew point. In fact, if I overlay dew point, you're going to see a very similar pattern. So you see they're pretty much overlaid almost precisely, but one advantage of mixing ratios, when you plot that, it's kind of sensitive to higher quantities of moisture and not so much to values back in the dry air, because the mixing ratio kind of goes up exponentially with dew point. So the higher values down around the Gulf Coast really stand out there. So I'll go ahead and put those fronts back on here. Again, we're using digital atmosphere here, and you can see that we've basically got a lot of dry air moving south into the southern plains right there, and the Gulf moisture is being pushed back, at least temporarily, down there into Mexico and the Gulf waters there. Closer look at the surface map, getting a little bit into the mesoscale. This is digital atmosphere here. This is the planetary maps that are built into the software, and we can see the temperature in Texas there, 70s, with dew points in the 20s and 30s, and even some single digits around Amarillo there. Out in the southeast U.S., this is the warm sector here, but we're really hard-pressed to find 60s dew points. So we're looking at 60-degree isodrosotherm, something like that right there. And then 65, we don't even really get a 65 there. Maybe we can probably do a 62. That would be something like that right there. So the better moisture is in Louisiana there. And normally when we have these frontal systems moving through the Midwest in April, they do tend to be pretty wet, and we get thunderstorms. But the lower dew points are kind of helping to minimize that risk there. Up in the northern plains, we can see the return of Old Man Winter once again. 40s and even some 30s with snow there in Iowa. And then out in the western U.S., looks pretty quiet up in the northwest. But down in the southwest U.S., we've got a little bit of a system moving through that area. I was able to see that on the satellite, so we'll check that out here in a bit. Okay, heading to the charts here. This is the thickness and isobars there. So things are pretty much dominated in the central U.S. by this big ridge coming down from central Canada into the Great Plains. So this is all a mass of very cold Canadian air. So that's filtering back in behind this system right here. And then out over the southwest U.S., it looks like there is something going on. We can see a thermal gradient from north to south in California there. So I would be inclined to put a front, something like that right there. Looks like the baroclinic low is somewhere around Desert Rock or Mercury, Nevada. And then a cold front extending down towards the Los Angeles area. We'll take a look at the upper level charts, 250 millibars. This is up at about 34,000 feet there. Give me just a second. Let me grab some water here. Okay, there we go. We've got pretty much a west-to-east zonal pattern, broken up in a series of waves there, and a couple of ridges. The one affecting the Great Plains, that's linked up with the cold air mass in that area. And then we can see that that system there in California definitely has upper level support. So if we go by the rule of thumb for finding the frontal system between the medium waves, we're going to be looking for maybe something like that right there. And that's actually pretty close to what we see there on the surface chart. So we definitely have consistency there between the upper level and the lower levels. Just a quick look at the state of the moisture. Again, these charts are around 6 in the morning. In fact, you can see the 850 millibar cold front coming south, and we give it these hollow pips and barbs to indicate that this is an upper level front. So there's our system there moving through the southern plains, and the moisture out ahead of that looks pretty dry. Below freezing Celsius there at Corpus Christi and Brownsville, and let's see here out in this region, these are all below zero. In fact, I think that's showing minus 31 there at New Orleans. So I'll probably have to take a look at that sounding and see just how dry it is. So this is probably a good time to do that. Let me bring up Slidell, which is just across Lake Pontchartrain there from New Orleans. And we don't appear to have that in yet, so we'll take this morning's data. And wow, yeah, that's very dry there for sure. So again, this is southeast Louisiana right there. It is fairly moist in the lower part of the troposphere there, up to about maybe 4,000, 3,000 feet. Dew points appear to be right around 60, and then they go rapidly to the minus 30 Celsius range. So that's indicating probably some very strong subsidence has been working on that air mass, especially seeing that warm air up there at about 5,000 feet. Temperatures almost 70 degrees up there at 5,000 feet. We'll take a look at Fort Worth, and this is getting on the other side of the front, back in the cold air, and you can see the inversion. That's what was suppressing the cumulus that we had there on the opening clip. And we can see that the top of the air mass is right around here. North winds at about 4,000 feet, transitioning to westerly up in the elevated mixed layer there. A little bit of moisture, residual moisture down near the surface, and that was enough to give us that cumulus cloud there, but it all spreads out beneath that inversion right down there. And let's see, we can take a random sounding. I guess we'll go up to Minneapolis. That's going to be up in the cold air, north winds, cold air advection. And I actually looked at the winds first because I wanted to see just how high that northerly flow went, and it goes up to about 13,000 feet or so. And that kind of indicates maybe where the top of the cold air mass is, right around there. So up here, this is all probably tropical air. If I bring this down, I usually like to do a slope kind of like this, like in between the dry adiabat and the wet adiabat. And that brings me down to about 70 degrees. So this is indicating to me that this is a tropical air mass aloft. And then down below that, we've got the, well, I guess that would be, I don't know, I'd probably call that a modified maritime polar air mass, and then above that, that's probably a bit of a tropical air mass up in that region. Okay. Let's go to the satellite, and yeah, this is pretty cool. This is the visible imagery for a couple of hours ago, and you can see some interesting waves there along the top of that stratus and stratocumulus. Very stable there beneath the frontal inversion, and that gives us a good environment there for waves to form. And we can also see depth in the clouds, like right in here. Looks like a slightly higher layer. We're getting the shadowing on the east side of that cloud, and you can see more of it right there in Illinois. This is kind of like a layer of higher stratocumulus or low altostratus there. And then on top of that, we got layers of cirrus, and yeah, this right here is going to be cirrus. And then that leaves us with the water vapor. And you notice that even with that dry air in the lower levels around Louisiana, it doesn't show up very well on the water vapor imagery. And we've mentioned in previous webcasts that the water vapor channel is sensitive to the mid and upper level troposphere. So it doesn't really indicate what's going on in the lower levels very well. It's more what's going on in the mid and upper levels is what we see with that satellite there. And there's moisture flowing up there from Mexico, and here we can see a lot of dry air across the Midwest. Pretty good wrapping up with that system there in Illinois. And yeah, you can see the next system coming in from Nevada off the charts right there. There it is. Okay, let me take a look and see what's going on in chat here. Pretty good crowd on tonight. We've got Ron Chalfant there in Los Angeles, up in the mountains, 54 degrees. Megan John reporting 40 in central Minnesota. We got Carl Berghoff here and Funwood Tech, Robert Pleasant in Tennessee, Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, reporting 57. Robert Pleasant has 72 in Tennessee. Burl H. reporting 33 in Iowa City. Megan John hoping for a little bit of relief there in Oklahoma. We've got David Moore, Electric Dog. Ryan Toomey's Electric Dog is reporting 32 in Chicago. Ryan is mentioning clear skies rolling through South Florida, cool temperatures hovering around the mid-70s there. Watching the massive wildfire outbreak in western Oklahoma there. David Lumbert mentioning North Little Rock has updated the amount of tornadoes last Friday up to 13, including 2 EF2s. We got Christian Flock there in Yukon, Oklahoma, 68. Mike Estwick, 59 there in Denver. We have Sue M here, and Adam Davis says it's looking more and more like he'll end up back in Indiana by June. Mike Estwick asking when did Digital Atmosphere 3.02 came out. That came out sometime last December, I think. I did some work on it before the holidays. And we've got development work going on right now. There's going to be some new features added to that. So we're sitting right around 3.02 or 3.03, somewhere there. Mike Estwick saying it's bone dry there in Colorado. Adam Davis, Northwest Pennsylvania, perpetual winterland. Mike Estrick reporting a fire south of the Springs, 40,000 acres. Shirley Keast is here, 30 degrees in Michigan. Mike Estrick says, looks like the radio sonde that we were looking at earlier got some condensation and then some evaporative cooling. Slidell sounding. Chris Tyne, Go 16 is so cool. Ron Chalfon, it's a big improvement. And Carl Burkhoff says, remember to like. And hello to Mike R. and Brandon Jarvis there in Aiken, South Carolina, and Mick in Australia. Mick has been with us about a year or two there. It's a name that goes way back. Okay, goes west imagery there. So we can see the next upper level low just off the coast there of San Francisco. And this is mostly, from what I've seen so far, this appears to be mostly an upper level system. We'll take a look at a few more charts here. I've got some NAM graphics we can take a look at. And why don't I just pull those up? This is from College DuPage here. So this will give us a good way to look at what's coming at us over the next 2 days or so. So this is the upper level flow, and we can see the medium wave ridge right there over the Great Basin and Four Corners. And there's our low right there over Iowa. Okay, rolling that forward. You can see this system here digging in pretty good there in California. In fact, if I show you the 250, let me switch to that real quick. 250. Yeah, there we go. The coloring in here is isotax, strength of the wind field. And you can see that coming in off the west coast there on the back side of the trough. We've got about 120, 130 knots coming in. And on the other side, on the forward side there, we've only got about 100. Typically, when we have stronger flow on the backside like we see here, that means that the trough itself is prone to dig further to the southeast. So just looking at this, we can see that this is probably heading for Texas and Oklahoma. And there it is right there. The upper level low kind of closes off a bit there, heading across the Four Corners, and then that area of strong winds heads into West Texas there, affecting Guadalupe Pass and El Paso there. And you can see the strong difluence of the winds there across Texas. Now, difluence is often in some weather books linked to upward vertical motion. However, you have to kind of consider what's happening here. You do have difluence looking strictly at direction. So yeah, we're spreading the air apart. And what that means is that, you know, if we have difluence going on, we should have upward motion to fill the void there. However, what's also happening is we have speed convergence. We have these strong 80, 90 knot winds coming up on 30 knot winds there. So that's like a bunch of cars coming up to a stoplight where other cars are stopped. So you get this convergence going on, and that cancels out the difluence. So really, you're back to looking at diagnostics to figure out what's really happening aloft. So there's no perfect way of figuring out, just eyeballing the charts, what's going on in terms of divergence there. So anyway, what we do know, however, that is a jet max there, and the jet max is running something like that. And if we go back to the other basics, the four cell theory, we've got the left front quad kind of in this area here, and the left rear quad in this area here. So this is going to be downward motion, and then we're going to have upward motion up in this area. And south of the jet, that's going to be indeterminate because of the cyclonic flow. However, there's probably enough lift in here to help augment the low-level jet. So we may see the flow start to come out of the south here in the next couple days as this trough approaches. And this is what we actually call transverse circulation. when the cells that I talked about right there, when they link up, a lot of times you have downward motion if the flow is more straight, and then we have the upward motion right there, and so you get this cross flow going like that, and that's what actually helps augment the low-level jet. All right, let's see what other graphics we have. We can check out the dynamics coming at us. The plot that we're seeing right here, this is vertical velocity. So this would be great for looking at upward vertical motion to see what the atmosphere is doing, how it's responding, but you can see how noisy the field is here. So there's obviously orographics going on. If you look in Arizona right here, when I animate this, you can see there's some sort of standing wave right there. So there's probably some lift maybe heading up to the Mogollon Rim and the Rockies. And then there's these other oscillations going on. So what you can do is you can look at the overall pattern and you kind of see that there's upward motion in this region, but it's going to be kind of hard to isolate exactly where strong motion is occurring, whether it's strong there or so on. And I'll show you another chart that we can look at to kind of resolve that. What will help, one chart we can look at is vorticity, and that's this graphic here. Let's see what happens with the system coming at us. This is going to be Friday afternoon here, and you can see the flow is pretty channeled. So there's not any really strong short waves heading into West Texas or New Mexico there. But the flow there is becoming progressively more and more positively anticyclonic, or positively try that again. More and more, we're getting more and more positive vorticity approaching this area as these higher values come in from the west. So yeah, we are getting some upward motion working through this area, and then south of there it's a little bit indeterminate. So let's roll this forward. This is going to be about peak heating time. So there's probably a few very weak waves maybe helping to maybe steepen the lapse rates out in West Texas. Also the height falls approaching, that's another factor there. But most of this is channeled. And then we get the trough itself moving out into Texas early on Saturday there. There's all the cold air aloft. So that'll steepen the lapse rates right there, just the change of air masses aloft. And then we get this big upper level low over the Red River Saturday night. And then there's this other system moving up from the southwest right there. Now here's a new feature that I haven't really shown. This is Q vectors. So this is another way we can look at upper level lift. So wherever we have convergence, Q vector convergence, that indicates upward motion at that layer. And also by relating the alignment of the Q vectors, the magnitude and alignment, like you see right here, that's crossing the Q vectors. That can indicate whether you have frontogenesis or frontalysis. So when the Q vectors are pointing out to warm air, like you see right here, that's going to indicate frontogenesis. And there's a lot of crossing out there in West Texas, so there may be a bit of a front coming together, maybe strengthening that little tailwind front that we've got out there in West Texas that may be likely coming together a little bit better. And then you see the divergence right here. That's the Q vector divergence indicating downward motion at that level. So that's all the subsidence working on the central planes. Now these vectors here, these are fairly analogous to ageostrophic flow. In other words, where the flow is out of balance. So we can kind of use this to kind of find out where important processes are going on. Here's some Q vector convergence right there in Wisconsin. So there may be something going on there at the surface, maybe some lift. So these charts are kind of hard to find. They're out there, and This is the link where I got this, albany.edu. Looks like it's a student project there, but it's pretty cool. And I know WindGrids definitely does these charts. And I'm sure Jeff Krob there can probably answer any questions about that. So anyway, it's pretty neat there. Okay, let's get through the other charts. Let's look at the simulated radar. So we roll this forward through Thursday, and then into Thursday night, and then Friday. And you can see that we get a little bit of what looks like elevated showers around the Edwards Plateau region. And then later during the day on Friday, not a whole lot going on. Looks like we get some strong upper level lift. This is probably associated with that divergent left front quadrant right there. Strong jet stream energy. And then looks like the NAM tries to break out some precip around Big Spring and Fort Stockton there. That's going to be Friday evening. And then Saturday, convection rolling across Texas. And a lot of this looks kind of elevated there. And looks like a system heading up towards Southern California there. So maybe we'll look at that in more detail tomorrow. So why do we have these elevated storms? Let's look at the temperatures on Friday afternoon. We've had this huge ridge affecting the central and eastern U.S., pushing a lot of cold air southward there. So even by Friday, we're not quite rid of it. And at 21Z, 4 p.m. on Friday, you can see temperatures. Let me give you the scale here. See those temperatures right there around Dallas, 65, 64. That's pretty cool there. 73 in San Antonio, and looks like even 50 around Lubbock there. So the situation we have is, looks like a front there, kind of a stationary front, kind of banked up against the mountains there. We've got maybe a very narrow sliver of heating around Fort Stockton, Fort Davis, the Big Bend area, and storms are probably going up there, maybe a little bit of orographics. And then when they do get heading to the east there, they cross over the frontal boundary and get into this cool air, and they decouple from the lower troposphere, and they become elevated. So the severe weather potential looks pretty low here for Friday, because anything that's out in Texas proper is probably going to be elevated. And another way we kind of assess that is with mixed layer CAPE there. And let me back that up. What we're doing here, we're assessing the severe potential using mixed layer CAPE, and you can see that the values, let me bring this up, bring the scale up there. Heading into Friday, get up to peak heating here, 4 p.m. Friday. You can see that most of the instability we have is way out to the west there, and the values are pretty low, around 5,000 to 7,000 joules per kilogram, indicating that we're probably just looking at weak showers there. So the cold air is definitely taking a toll there. And it looks like by Saturday, maybe some 1,000 values down in San Antonio, Austin, Junction, Kerrville. Looks like maybe a little bit of a front taking shape like right around there. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. That could change and strengthen here. So Saturday, South Central Texas, we'll have to keep an eye on that right there. And you can see that the Gulf is definitely open. So I don't know if we're going to have quite the instability there for severe weather, but it does look like the moisture is flowing north there. Okay, let's see. What are we going to do next? Yeah, we'll take a quick look at the 850 millibar dew point, because to me this kind of gives me an indication of the moisture quality. 850 millibars, that's up there at about 5,000 feet. And we'll roll this up to Friday, peak heating. And there it is right there. So yeah, moisture is making its way to the high plains of East Texas and New Mexico. The blue here indicating values of about 48 dew points, 48 degrees. This area here, Texas Panhandle, that's going to be about 40 Fahrenheit. So the moisture is not great, but it is making its way north. And let's see how that changes for Saturday. You can see the vectors showing that moisture continuing to come north. And then peak heating for Saturday is going to be about right here. And yeah, I do see higher values. Around the Houston area, that's going to be about 51 Fahrenheit. And this purple here, that's picking up about 55 Fahrenheit. So that, yeah, that's getting enough moisture there to support some possible storms there. So it's going to come down to boundaries, what the mid-level lapse rates are like, and whether the temperatures come up for Saturday. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on Saturday there. And I think that's probably all the charts I did want to show. Yeah, one more here. This is the 700 millibar temperature. And I'm going to give you the scale down here at the bottom. This is pretty handy for looking at the cap. So I'm going to roll this forward, and I'm going to bring this up to peak heating on Friday. And you'll see those yellows trying to come up there into Texas, coming up with that southerly flow there. So that this line I'm drawing right here in the lighter green colors, that's going to be about 48 Fahrenheit, about 9 Celsius. So this is a stronger capping here. And then getting up to peak heating, it's looking like maybe a little bit of capping around the Big Bend area of Texas and around Fort Stockton, but hasn't made much progress into Texas proper. And let's see what happens going into Saturday. Yeah, it looks like things warm up a little bit in Texas at 700 millibars. But yeah, look at this, lots of cooling coming in. And this is peak heating here for Saturday. And these values here, that's going to be about 3 to 4 Celsius, which is pretty cool. And that indicates to me that the atmosphere is pretty weakly capped due to all that cold air coming in the mid and upper levels. So that's not really conducive there to like a loaded gun type sounding. That would be more consistent with early convection and that kind of thing. So again, we'll just kind of wait and see how Saturday pans out there. Okay, so I guess we'll put it together there and do the forecast. Let me see if I can find my charts here. I don't seem to have the pivotal weather charts. Let me see if I can bring that up. Pivotal weather. Yeah, I guess I can show you how I bring up these charts. Go to Models, GFS, Continental US, and bring that forward about 6 hours, and then pick the precipitation type there. And hopefully that doesn't affect the stream. Let me take a look. Okay, 0 drop frames. We're looking pretty good there. And let me see if I can load these in. Okay, stream is looking good there. And we're about 2/3 of the way done loading the charts. Getting a few drop frames. Let me wait for this to stabilize. Yeah, see there, that's how I keep track of trouble there on the stream. I always like that effect. That's pretty cool. Whoa, all right. It's like being in a barber shop there. Okay, so let's see, rolling forward. The big thing that's going to dominate the weather over the next couple days is going to be this big high pressure area. So obviously that's going to infiltrate a lot of cold air there into Texas and keep things kind of stable as this next system approaches. So let's see, we're going forward into Thursday. This is tomorrow's webcast around that time. Cold front moving through eastern Arizona. And then I think stuck in here in the mountains, northwest Mexico, I think that's our front, which is going to be a factor for Friday there. And you can actually see convection going up right there. For Friday, you can see the very strong gradient. That's indicating a lot of cold air that's kind of dammed up against the mountains there. So we're going to be looking at a pattern for Friday, kind of like this here. And then I think we've got a cold front, something like that right there. So kind of a very narrow sliver there of warm air, mostly in the Big Bend area. And I think near the intersection of that warm front, near that thermal ridge, I think that's probably the best position there for thunderstorms, maybe up to Pecos and Monahans, possibly. But storms that do get going are going to track into that deeper cold air, so they're not going to last severe for very long. But there may be some prospects there around Fort Stockton, so that's probably where I would want to be for Friday. And then going into Saturday, here's the peak heating time. Looks like a new surge of cold air coming in from the north there. I think what's happened is our wave has moved eastward, and that's pulled down some cold air in the wake. That wave is probably mostly in the mid-levels right there. So probably do have some elevated convection there. Looks like we do have some southerly flow coming in the Houston area, so we'll have to watch this little boundary on Saturday. Looks like a new system coming in from the northwest here. Meanwhile, the system out in the southeast U.S. tracks eastward into Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia for Sunday. And this system really gets going in the northern plains there. Looks like more winter weather there for... No, actually, it looks kind of warm there. The model going for a little bit of liquid precip around Tuesday and Wednesday there in the Lake Superior area. And then here comes that surge coming southward on Tuesday. And then looks like we get into another upslope flow pattern for Thursday. I think by Friday, probably most of the, I don't know, warm front, maybe something like that there in Texas. We'll have to watch that for thunderstorm activity, possibly around the 26th. And then here comes this next system for Friday the 27th. It looks like we've got some storms there developing in the Mississippi area, and another shot of cold air on its way south. So lots of ridging for the following weekend there, 29th and 30th. And let's see how things look for May. Looks like more cold air coming south. 1026 millibar high. 540 line coming all the way down to North Dakota, and looks like a good blob of cold air up in Nunavut there. So that'll head south. Looks like kind of a rainy pattern there for Texas. Upslope flow setting up for the 2nd and 3rd. So I don't know when we're going to shake off this pattern. I guess it's probably going to be maybe the 2nd week of May. Seems like it's been one week after the other where this has been going on, but this is really uncommon for mid and late May. So in fact, I can't really remember seeing like a strong Hudson Bay vortex in late spring. So I think we're really coming to that point where the pattern should start changing, especially as the heating really gets cranking across Texas and the southwest. And then we'll probably, who knows, be into a busy chase season there. All right, let me take one last look at chat here. Probably can't read all of this, but I appreciate everybody's comments there. And Mick says, love your shows, wish I could catch more of them. I appreciate that. And Ranchel Font mentioning Venture Sky. A little discussion there about Icon and the ECMWF. And Carl Berghoff says, looks like a small chance for a thunderstorm on Tuesday. And Kachelmann Vetter, Chris Tyne mentioning that. Swiss company. Yeah, they've got some pretty good graphics there. We used some of that last year. Swiss HD model, that's what's being discussed there. And Ron Chalfant says, don't forget to hit the like button. So, yeah, please do that. All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate you watching. We'll be back tomorrow. And, yeah, keep watching the weather and checking out the charts. And we'll see you in 23 hours and 30 minutes. Take care.